And there are a lot of Black women who are afraid to travel in Africa because of what we've heard or what's pushed out in media. So it's like, I don't want to be kidnapped and, sent away, or I'm living in a hut.
They don't want you in the hut.
Right.
First of all, I've seen the way they make food. You can't do that. You're of no use. You don't have any useful skills for someone to kidnap you and put you in a village. You're a liability.
You're a dependent at this point.
You're a dependent.
Well, welcome back to Elevated Perspectives Podcast. Today we have part 2 out of 3 of my conversation with Karina Henry, better known as Karina Worldwide. In this conversation, we talk through her international husbands, we touch on her experience eating cat in Ghana, and we take a minute to really reflect on what solo travel can do, particularly for Black women, and about all the beauty that the African continent has to offer. If you haven't had a chance to see episode 1, we will link it above for you. But without further ado, let's get into the episode.
And exposing yourself. But let's get into the international husbands.
Let's get into the international husbands. Let me pull the microphone closer because I do have questions. Now here, listen, I'm going to frame this for you.
Okay.
So Justin and I have had many a conversation about passport bros.
Mm-hmm.
We all know about passport.
Oh, we all know about.
We're not going to spend time talking about passport bros. We all know about passport bros. Now, one thing that I said to him, because I think he saw like one of the things where it's like, oh, someone in Ghana and someone in Nigeria. He saw like one of those like recaps, right?
Right.
And he's just like, what's the difference? And I'm like, first of all, that's our sister in Christ, Karina. So put some respect on her name. But then I'm like, second of all, this is just good marketing. It's just good marketing.
It's become like my brand. It's my thing.
Like, it's just good marketing. But then, third of all, we got into a conversation about, and for additional reference, so Justin is actually Canadian. He's from Toronto, right? Okay. So he has 2 passports. Okay. 3 if he ever submits the paperwork that he needs to get his Grenadian citizenship. Which means that I would automatically get Grenadian citizenship, which we do want. Right? You're out here. You're gallivanting. You're having a time.
Experiencing all the things.
Right? All of the things. And eventually it comes up on the interwebs, this notion of these men are just using her for green cards and visas. And this is disgusting. And she's just out here. Some painted it like, oh, this, victim of a woman. And other people, this, what do you call the opposite of a womanizer? This manonizer, female passport bro.
Meanwhile, I'm trying to get citizenship somewhere in Africa. But all right.
This is what I'm saying. There's this notion of this, U.S. centricism that takes place. Right. And I think particularly, we've had a lot of experience in Latin America, and it definitely happens there too, right? With people just coming and taking and extracting and mining. That's a whole other conversation. But we shift our focus to the continent of Africa, which is where some, I'm sure not all, but a lot of these men that you've had in your company have been. What do those conversations look like? People come to you and they're like, you're gallivanting about with these men. They're using you for these visas. This is silly. They're uncomfortable when you're licking their finger after they feed you goat intestines. I remember that one.
Which it wasn't even a finger lick. And I mean, they dragged me. And not only did they drag me on TikTok and Instagram, they dragged me so long that I took a trip back to Kenya. And then told him, now, we're going to turn the camera to make sure that they see that I'm not sucking on your finger. He put it, it was so close, but I did not look on the man's finger, but they don't care. Even when I tried to clarify, they were like, girl, shut up. You licking fingers over there in Kenya. I'm like, oh, geez.
We saw what we seen.
Right. It was like finger liquor. But you're asking, what are the conversations like when people do this? So I remember in the beginning when the first video, when I said my Kenyan husband with the finger licking and I was eating, I think it was the goat bowels, matura, right? And it was crazy because I had never experienced that before. I had dated in other countries, but that was the first time where I really put it on Front Street. And it was supposed to just be like this lighthearted joke. And the next morning I woke up and I had gone viral. They had dragged me. They told me the man is using me to come to the States. And I mean, that was the first time where a video or the reactions to a video made me cry. because I'm like, I thought it was just a funny joke. And then you have these people who are just like, she thinks it's funny, but really she's being used. And just, it was.
So is it because they're mean, or is it because you felt misunderstood?
It was because I felt misunderstood. I can take being mean all day, but I think I was still a newbie to the, to the creation space as well. So now, I mean, they can say whatever they want. I'm like, baby girl, keep the engagement going. Actually, let me find somebody to argue with you so y'all can keep commenting back and forth for like 3 days. But in that moment, I was still new. So them turning it into something where it's like, she's just being used and she doesn't know, or like, what about his wife at home? You're a Jezebel. And this was before people started throwing around passport bros. This was like 2020, 2021. So people were, and I mean, passport bros has been a thing, but they just started, really pushing it out there. Right. And some of the things were just so mean. And not only did it make me feel bad, I also felt like I had to come to the defense of my friend or my Kenyan husband, because people were messaging him like, how do you feel that
found him?
Up, girl? So that was my fault too.
The devil works hard, but internet trolls.
But it was my fault because I'm always like, whenever I post someone, I always tag them because I feel like if I can get exposure, I want to make sure you get exposure too. Right. And so, but I always ask them like, before I even submit a video, because I feel like one day I'm going to be famous and I don't want someone to slide something to TMZ talking about, I didn't give her permission to post this 7 years ago. So I always send them the video and I'm like, is this okay? Can I tag you in it? He wanted to be tagged. So the fact that people were going in his inbox and saying, you don't know that she's using you and, you should feel ashamed as well. And it was just a lot. And so he was sending me the screenshots. And I think it changed. It shifted from me feeling bad for myself to me feeling bad that I had put him in this situation. Yeah. And so it opened up, which is good now, because now people are like, they see me with an international husband, they're like, girl, go. I love it. I love it.
That's a conversation I had with Justin. I was like, you don't worry about what our good sis Karina has going on. You don't worry about it.
Right. I think it's also about intent. I don't go there with the intentions of finding a husband, right? And it also is kind of, I've had people ask me, are you really married? Are you like into like a poly relationship? And I'm like, and I do play into it sometimes, because sometimes depending on my mood, I might say, yeah, I am. And then I divorce him when I get on a plane. So it just depends on how I'm feeling. But I think it became an opportunity for a bigger conversation with these international husbands, because number one, the first thing people assumed is they're only marrying you or they're only like dating you because they want citizenship. Not once has anyone even asked me to visit the States. And I think that's also like an American thing where I love having my passport, my blue passport. I understand the privilege behind it, but we have to understand that our great United States of America is not the great sis she was back in the days when our grandparents were, moving there and like wanted a better life for themselves and all of that good stuff. And I mean, still a great country, of course. I would never give up my blue passport. Let me say that twice, because I don't want people to be like, well, then why don't you move somewhere? I have.
My personal FBI agent, if you're listening to this.
Right. I have moved somewhere else, but it brought about a greater conversation where people understood just because someone lives in Africa does not mean that they're automatically looking for a come up. They're not automatically looking for an opportunity to get their green card. Not once has anyone, even my ex-boyfriend who's Mexican, my mom had a conversation with him. And she said, well, I just wanted to, be clear. Are you using my daughter for a green card? And he said, well, she's not Canadian. Ooh. And I was like, get him. Now, first of all, I had to tell him, don't talk to my mama like that. But in my head, I'm like, get him, baby. He was like, she's not Canadian. God. If she were Canadian, then maybe. But she'll never be Canadian. And my mom was like, well, I mean, and I'm like, Mama, just stop. He shut you down. I told him don't talk to my mother like that, but in my head.
Oh God, that's so funny.
Right, but it opened up the door for greater conversations when it comes to citizenship and people feeling like, oh, they're just using people for citizenship. Now, I'm not saying everyone. Some people are being used for citizenship, but it's also about consent. If you agree to live in this lifestyle and bringing someone back, that's on you. The second thing is for women. I love that women are feeling, they're inspired to go out and just live their best lives using common sense. I always have to say that because I don't want anyone to go outside and then be like, well, Karina, and then I was, no. But it's so liberating to be able to go outside and live your best life and just enjoy. When I go to different countries, my name is not Karina, it is Christy. And at this point, some people might recognize me and they're like, Karina Worldwide. I'm like, no, I'm Christy girl. Who is Karina Worldwide, child? She famous?
That's racist. I don't even look like her.
She famous? No. But for the amount of women who have told me I've inspired them to live life and not care about, because it's more than just men and dating, just not care about what people think and live their best lives, like that is like a win for me. Because it took me a while to get there. Now it's like, okay, baby, you gonna see the next one in a while. But I had to. But then also, I had this conversation with a friend the other day, and he said the same thing. He's like, there is no difference. And after I thought about it, I'm like, maybe there isn't. And
we've got to be reflective. We've got to be reflective.
Right. And it gets to the point where we're so used to wanting to argue a point because we're like, I don't want to be the bad guy. I'm so different from them. And I'm like, for some people, it is the same thing. And if that's what you think, then that's perfectly fine. But I've never gone to a country with the intentions of, using my money to capitalize on people needing things or people viewing me as a come up. I've never said, okay, well, I know that they know I'm American. And so if I, usually when I go there, I'm like, oh, I don't have any money actually. We just, but it is all about perspective. For some people, no matter what I say, no matter how many times I say, it's not the same. People are going to say, girl, you was a passport sis. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'm a passport sis. Or, I think I am a woman who has learned how to utilize my resources to ensure that I have the best experiences possible. However, I do it responsibly because I never want anyone to feel offended. I never want, there to be a situation but if you think I'm a passport sis, and I also think when we talk about international husbands, I've had the best experiences because of these men. And it's not just like, I think when people think about international husbands, they think like sexually, and we're not going to get too deep in the weeds, but I'm like, if you think I'm out here just having sex, that is not my fight to fight. It's your opinion. Go for it, girl. Up until last week, I had a man at home. But anywho, I think it's been a cool experience because with these men, they've put me in positions where I can have these unique experiences I would never have with like a tour guide. I would never have with, even with like a driver. I've gone to people's mama's houses and we eating like my Zanzibar husband. My Zanzibar husband took me to his family's village, and I was sitting around learning how to cook her secret recipes, and we're eating around the table. Not the table, we were eating around each other like a family. I've had experiences that most people don't have because of this. And people can say, well, why don't you get a tour guide? I have yet to find a tour guide that is going to say, okay, we're going to spend the whole day together and that's going to be it. Usually tour guides are like, you got 3-4 hours, maybe 6 hours, and that's it.
That's amazing.
Right.
I do think, because that genuine connection, bond, friendship, whatever we want to call that.
And I'm still friends with all of them to this day.
All of the Mr. Karinas, Mr. Worldwide.
Right. I have had some, just a little bit of toxic. It's not very toxic, but I've had situations. Toxic, right? Oh, well, you about to get it. I've had a situation where one of my international husbands, his girlfriend actually reached out to me. And at the time, and I'm always very upfront, like, I'm here to have fun, to experience like their country, blah, blah, blah. Please do not bring any drama. He was like, and it was weird too, because this man was the one that was running around like, this is my wife, and I'm like, this is my husband. And we were telling everybody. Random people at the restaurant, we just yelling, we married, y'all. And they like, okay. So his girlfriend actually reached out to me on Instagram. And she said, your Ghanaian husband is actually my real future husband. And I apologized to her. And then she's like, yeah, either you can take the video down or can you tag me in the video? And then I had to reach out to him like, okay, I get what happened. However, I'm not going to tag. How would that look? My Ghanaian husband. But let me CC that girlfriend. Right. So then I said, well, I apologize if I said or did anything that offended you. And then she wanted me to take the video down. I'm like, if I were to take the video down, it would have to come from him. And he's already okayed the video. And he refused to take the video down because I think he grew by like 5,000 followers in like the first week.
I think I remember.
Girl, the body.
Real.
The body.
I think I remember that. The second you said good now, I'm like,
And
I think I remember that one.
But he was too toxic. And that's why I had to cut him loose. There ain't nothing to cut a husband off now. That one, I want to retract my previous statement. I'm cool with all of them except for one.
Except for one.
Because
there's always got to be one.
Oh, that one had me in the trenches. My best friend's cousin turned out to be one of his girlfriends. And this is not the same girlfriend that reached out to me. And I was staying at the girl's house. And it just so happened that she was saying, like, I'm going to Ghana because my man is in. I'm like, girl, the best man is in Ghana. Like, we just having like a tit for tat. And then my best friend, she ruined it because she was like, show her your Ghanaian husband. I'm like, I just my little, you ain't got to tell me twice. And I show her, and when she was like, I'm like, he look good, don't he? Make your mouth dry. And she said, that's my boyfriend. I'm like, let me see a picture. And she showed me a picture. I'm like, oh, they don't even look the same. Girl, it's the same man.
Oh, no.
I'm like, they don't even look the same. Look at that. They don't even look the same.
Obviously different.
Oh.
You got a freckle?
Listen, they might be twins, but girl, they're not the same person. But they was the same person. And it spiraled into something like.
But in all of like the kingdom of Ghana, you happen to just.
And I mean, but he was probably, and I'm not even being biased, he was probably the sexiest man I saw the entire time I was there. 6'5", built like Hercules. Oh.
Now stop. I'm married. You have me on here. The microphone is.
When you get some time, girl, go back and scroll to my Instagram and look at him.
I will say one thing that's interesting. If you had husbands in France or in the Netherlands or in England, I'm not sure that people would be so concerned about them using you for a ticket to the U.S.
But that's the sad thing, because when I first started, before I even started doing the whole like Kenyan husband or international husbands in Africa, I actually had a YouTube video and did snippets of it on Instagram. And this is before TikTok made its way to us, about my the best date I ever had. And I referred to him as my Italian husband several times. And there was never once he's trying to get citizenship. There was never once nothing. And that's why I think it bothered me so much in the beginning, because it was really like, because they're African, you assume that they want to come back with me to the States.
Right.
And
it's not so subtle. And with a lot of the, it's one of those situations where the call is coming from inside the house. Because the people saying these things could pass for tribesmen of the people they're talking about. Which is disappointing, but we digress. I do want to talk to you about Africa, though. We have only been to Marrakesh. We've only been to Morocco. We haven't actually gotten to explore the continent yet.
Okay.
So give us some of the highlights. When was the first time you went? Are you going? Do I have this? Are you going again soon?
To Ghana?
Someone's going to Ghana? You're going to Ghana?
Probably so.
You're going to Ghana soon?
30 in a row.
30 in a row. Oh, wait, for
Afro. Well, they've changed it. Afro Future now.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
It's fun, but the first year, 2021, I had a ball. Then 2022, it's just like, by the third day, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to keep partying until 7 a.m., going to get breakfast, and then I'm missing like the excursions and the experiences because I spent so much time partying. It was a lot. So I think this year, if I decide to go, I am going to limit how many times. And I say that now. The next thing I know, I'm in a club saying, "What?"
because like the music comes on and there's like some heavy piano playing and like, you know, people are moving and vibing in the groove and you get caught up in it. Listen, I'm not a partier.
Me either.
But they put whatever they put through the speakers starts going and other people start moving and all of a sudden, you know, one thing leads to another.
I don't even know why I go out. Like I went out for the first time this year, yesterday. I went to a cenote club, which wasn't really like a club.
Ooh, is that like a club in a cenote? Or is it a club called? Oh.
It's a club in a cenote, and it's like on the way to Tulum, next to Cenote Tortugas, Casa de Tortugas. Casa de Tortugas. See, and so it's like when I first saw it, I'm like, wow, this was a good idea. I need to find a cenote that no one is using, and then reach out to people like, can we make something work here? Because that was actually a really good idea. But I am not a clubber by nature. Even when I travel, Ghana is the only place where, in Kenya once, where I go out and I'm like, I want a club, because that's the atmosphere you're in, where everyone's going to the festivals and you're expected to go out at 11 o'clock at night and not get until 8 a.m. But then when you get in at 8 a.m., you sleep until 3 o'clock. And then you're like, okay, well, I only have 3 or 4 hours before I have to do it all over again. And you get into this cycle. So that's
hard to break. Once you get almost like nocturnal with that, it's hard to break. And then you're like, oh, but I really wanted to do the sunrise, you know, hot air balloon safari.
And you're like, well, I'm too tired. And that's why the last 2 days, I was just like, yeah, I'm not partying anymore. And that was when I got to experience like the cat meet.
The what? The cat. Oh, yeah. The cat meet.
That might be where the concern comes in.
I thought I heard you say cat meet, and then I was like, she didn't say cat meet. And then I remembered who I was talking to. And I'm like, she said cat meet.
What did I do?
Are cats gamey? I feel like they're kind of like...
So it's crazy. They taste like a mixture, and I have a pet cat.
Oh.
Right.
Did you tell your pet cat?
And she knew.
Did you ate,
I could
you
tell
ate her brethren?
I could tell she knew, because the way she began to treat me, I think she smelled it on my breath, even though I was like, scrub the tongue. I think she smelled it on my breath, and she was just like, girl, how dare you? But it tastes like a mixture between shrimp and chicken. They dragged me, of course, for that too.
No, that sounds real good in like a gumbo.
Oh, and it's crazy. Once again, it came from just deciding to have like an off the grid experience. Mm-hmm. So I often go with a group, like I host the group trip to Ghana. And I always allow myself time to do things by myself. The first year, I was, of course, living my best life because I had my husband. And then when I was supposed to go back a week before, I found out he had a girlfriend that was my best friend's cousin. So I couldn't really talk to him anymore because he was toxic. Mm. And so I had to kind of maneuver around and find some new ways to have experiences. But I ended up meeting somebody on Instagram, that's one of the things I love about social media. Mm. You connect with people all over the world.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is tell them, I'm coming to such and such. And then they'll just blow you up. And it's like, I have friends in this country. So I met this girl, and she was the one that brought it up. She's like, have you ever eaten cat before? And I'm like, no, but tell me more. And she's like, I'm going to this city on the outskirts of Accra, and I'm going to do this tour with these two brothers. And I've heard that they've eaten cat meat before. But I've never brought it up, and I don't know how to. I'm like, girl, don't worry. So
I'm trying not to laugh just because of the innuendos here. If I'm looking at you funny, I'm trying not to be childish.
But she's also telling me in a way like, you know how your friend pushes you up to do something they want to do, but they're scared to do it?
Yeah.
Like, girl, you got it. You brave. I wanted to ask him about the cat meat, but I don't know. And I'm like, oh, don't worry, we'll go. We go, and we're on a tour, and it's myself. We had a photographer, it's her, and then there's 4 white people on this tour. Mm. And he's talking about like the slave trade and like just so much culture, and everything's great. And while he's saying that, I just randomly say out loud, I think this is a place where they eat cat meat, but I just don't know where I'd find it. And I say that while we're walking
Very subtle.
The way, now, my photographer and my friend at that moment, they already knew. I had already told them, like, we're going to eat cat meat today. Mm-hmm. But the white people, they turn around like, and then I have to keep a straight face like, you heard me. And so the tour guide, he's like, you want to try feline? Because I think maybe in his mind, he's like, let me make sure she's saying cat meat and not like something that I just heard wrong. And I'm like, yes, I would like to try some feline, because we were in an Uber the day before. And when she was telling me, and the guy's like, oh, you can find cat meat everywhere. And I'm like, right, but I don't want to just go and pick one up and then just say. So he said, well, talk to me after the tour. I'm like, all right. After he drops the white people off, he comes back to us and he's like, okay, and you said you wanted to try cat meat? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, come on. And this is where I say, I believe God looks out for children and fools, because sometimes when I'm in situations, I'm like, I'm not a child. So there's that. Because he didn't say, yes, I'm going to give you the cat meat. He just said, follow me. And I'm like, and then my friends, of course, having the black moment, they're like, I'm like, and so they're looking like, and so he's telling me, like, they have a saying where if you eat cat meat in Ghana, if you're African American, you will die in Ghana. And I'm like, wait, but today?
Wait.
Because for cats, it's similar to like Egypt, where they're viewed as these like spiritual, like they have spiritual powers, and which there's another side of that too. I could go all day about what I experienced after I ate the cat meat, and I'm not even, we can get into it. Okay. So my photographer and my friend are like, and I'm like, come on, guys. Now I didn't turn into the white people. Like, come on. So he says, and you know, when you eat cat meat in Ghana as an African American, you will die in Ghana. I'm like, oh, but today? Because if so, the tour is off. I'm not. And he said, no, not today when it's time. And I'm like, come on, guys. After he says, I'm still like, we go through these alleyways, and I mean, it gets narrow and narrower, and I'm like, okay, if it gets even more like, if it gets to the point where I'm like, then we're gonna have to turn around. Right. And it got to that point, and I still was like, well, we're in there now. So we're walking in a straight line, and then it opens up to this like house, and there are like hundreds of cats. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating, on the roof, like everywhere. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't specific. I thought we were going to a market to pick up cat meat that was already like prepared and frozen. They're going to pull it out the freezer, I pay for it, and then that's it. No, these are live cats. And I mean, at that moment, I started crying like a little, because I thought about my cat at home, and cats are coming up to me and they're rubbing themselves, and I'm like, oh no. So the guy, he picks up a cat, and the cat, I kid you not, my cat has like tiger stripes, look just like Davina. And I'm like, oh no, not that one, definitely not that one. I could never, and I guess I was taking too long. Yeah. So the guy just said, we're gonna do this. And I will say this, it was as humane as possible, because my photographer, while I was turning my head saying, no, Jesus, no, and covering my ears so that everybody heard the screams, and people, the residents are in the background laughing at me and ha, girl, that's normal. We was going to eat it anyway. Right, we were going to eat it anyway. He's recording it, and to this day, this happened in December of last year. To this day, I haven't looked at the video. But I made him go through, and he's like, it took 4 seconds, and it was done. So I'm like, okay, that makes me feel better. But
it's like, people slaughter animals every day.
All the time. All the time. And then people are like, well, this couldn't happen in the States. I'm like, they're slaughtering cows and horses, and just shut up. So then it's done. And then he says, do you want to hold it? And I mean, the fur, and I'm like, but this is the first thing I said. You didn't have meat in the freezer? And he's like, no, what freezer? And I'm like, then I realized I never had this conversation with anyone. I just assumed I was going to be going to a marketplace.
Yeah. There we go. With assumptions.
There we go.
Based on our background, we think we walk into a Publix, and there's a package of cat meat, and we take that home. So
right.
Grandma throws it in a stew pot.
But that was another thing we had a conversation about on social media as well, because people are like, how inhumane. I'm like, your Uncle Bobby is probably throwing cows and pigs on the grill right now. Right. Cállate, porfa. So, be quiet, please. So, but then, like you said, that's that luxury of being in a space where we don't have to see the entire process. And that was I even said that in a video that I posted on TikTok. That was the moment where I realized, even with me saying, I immerse myself, I understand there is still that privilege where I believe you should have had the cat meat already sitting there. Mm. And so he also explained that the reason why they don't is because there's a lot of spiritual stuff that with the cats and stuff, and how you have to eat cat meat fresh, because if you don't, people can put a curse on you. And we're gonna get into that too, because I was like, I remember that time. I was even calling the twin, like, it's twin brothers. I was calling the twin, like, you remember that time when I ate cat when I came with y'all? TV was falling off the walls, and I'm hearing voices in my house. Yeah. So he also said, like, people can curse the cat meat, and it's weird that they don't. It was confusing to me, but people can curse cats, and anyone who's involved in the entire process, the person who cooks it, the person who, who prepared it, the person, cooked and prepared, the person that bought the pot, the person that bought the seasonings, everyone is cursed.
Oh, that's like a 6 degrees of separation.
Right. So he said you always have to buy the cat from the person to make sure that, they're accepting the money, blah, blah, blah. So we go through the entire process, and it was so enlightening for me, because I got to see, usually the hair and everything's off of my meat. Mm-hmm. I got to see them burn it. I saw them like skin it. I'm seeing the entire process. And then when it was time to eat it, my friends were like, I'm not eating that, because I didn't see him pull any of the innards out. He put the head on, everything went into the pot. Mm. And so towards the end, they're like, here you go, here's the head. And I'm like, I'm eating the legs and stuff. I'm like, what? He said, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to actually eat the head. So they save it for the person that, like, usually like a guest.
Yeah.
And I was like, now, I never said I wanted the head. I tried it, and actually the head was the best part. And it's crazy too, because people would assume, okay, my friend is from Belize, then my photographer was from Ghana. So we did like a teaser, and people were automatically like, oh, I know the Belizean's gonna eat it. I know the person from Ghana's gonna eat it. Meanwhile, they were like, oh, they were triggered. They were like, oh no, we're not trying this. My friend goes in the corner, starts throwing up. Meanwhile, I'm like, the American's like, you don't want to try the leg, or no? Okay. But yeah, they dragged me for that one too. But would I ever do it again? I don't even want to say no, because I don't want a lot of y'all on here. Yeah. But it was eye-opening, because I realized that because we have the privilege to not see the entire process, it makes it easier for us to judge. Because there were so many people who were like, how dare you eat a cat? And then of course, if you say that to me, I'm going on your page. And I see you at a barbecue eating a sausage dog.
What's the difference, my guy? Other than the quality of meat.
But that's the thing. Like, it makes it easier for us to criticize and judge other people in other countries, because we don't have to see that entire process. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was crazy, because when I came home, number one, I think I have like a stomach of iron, like, or is it stomach of steel? Whatever it is, I got it. Mm-hmm. And nothing ever bothers me. People ask me, like, what meds do you take when you're traveling? I'm like, girl, I just pray over my food. That's it. God have your way. And then that's it. And I've never had a problem. For about 3 weeks, I mean, I couldn't even sleep a full 4 hours before. I was just like, it was just a constant flow. And then after I started feeling better, my cat started doing weird things. Like, she was just doing it. I don't want to go back to my house. I don't want to go back to my house and she starts doing it again. Like, maybe she forgot.
Fresh on your mind, and then you have to walk in there, and it's like,
and then she's over there levitating.
Like,
she's like
cat eyes, and
right.
Yeah,
this is the next step. I'm levitating.
Ooh.
But she started doing a lot of stuff. So then my boyfriend's parents, they actually came and prayed over the house, and it was crazy because they never knew I ate cat meat. Mm. So while they're praying and everything, they stop and they look at my cat. My cat starts doing this weird like cough, like a deep throated like. She had never done that before. So I'm looking over there too, like, and my ex-boyfriend's mom is like, I think the issue that you're dealing with, it has something to do with the cat. And then of course my ex-boyfriend's like, you know about the cat meat. I told you. And I'm like, shut up. Don't be putting my business out there in front of these people so they can judge me. But a lot of things happened. Like the TV fell off the wall randomly, which is okay. Because it could have just happened. My whole sink fell out one day. And then I'm like, oh, okay, maybe just, poor infrastructure or poor, like, it could have been that. But then we started hearing voices. The TV started flickering on. Like, it would, just cut on randomly. You cut it off, it would cut on again. And then I'm thinking, you never want to say you got a spirit in your house.
You never want to say, we don't acknowledge.
Right, because I'm like, the Holy Spirit is the Holy Spirit up in here. I'll hit you with the Bible. Go sit down somewhere. So I'm like, must be the timer. Maybe there's a timer. There was no timer. I would cut it off. It would cut back on. And then I've also learned when it comes to, it's what I love about living in Mexico is they are similar to Black folk when it comes to religion and spirituality. Because I made a joke and said, I got a Casper in my house. And next thing I know, they were like, okay, well, the pastor's going to be free in 2 days. So we're going to come by your house. And it wasn't even a question. I made a joke and said, Casper, I got a Casper. They were like, let me call him right now. And in 2 days, they were in my house. And then after that, I slept peacefully and I never had an issue. But for that like month, it was just a lot. And then I called the one of the twin brothers from Ghana, and I'm like, you remember that time when you told me that, things can happen, I could be cursed? I think I'm cursed. And he laughed first. And then he's like, oh, seriously? Oh, no, it wasn't a joke. I told you. They actually have a city, and I forgot the name of the city, but it's in the video I recorded, where the whole city, there were maybe 12 or 13 people who died because of cat meat. Because they stole a cat and cooked it, and the person cursed the cat. And I thought like, this is a good story, until the photographer was like, of course everyone knows that. And he's not the type to just like, and then, I
like, dummy, you didn't know about.
But it's crazy because I still didn't believe him. So I started going back to the hotel like, and at the time I knew the city. I'm like, have you heard of this city? And they're like, how do you know about the city? And I'm like, oh shit. Mm-hmm. And I was going to, and I asked like 5 people, the bus driver, this city? And they're like, I'm like, oh, this is real. So after I told him like, our house is cursed, he's like, you're going to have to pray it out because at this point, there's nothing else you can do. But when my cat started doing that, I was like, oh, she don't got asthma. But yeah, that's my cat eating story.
So moral of the story, if we do eat cat meat, we're going to make sure it's fresh.
Make sure it's fresh.
We're going to make sure that it's accompanied by knowledgeable preparers.
There we go.
And we're going to pray on the plane ride back, just in case we don't need Nagos crossing the ocean. We don't need any of that. Okay. Let me ask you this. Let me get into this. So, you primarily solo travel.
Yes.
But you do group trips.
I do.
Is this a good way for other women? There are a lot of women, especially Black women and other women of color.
Right.
We want to get out. We want to see the world. We want to go. We want to explore, right? But we don't want to wind up on like a bad version of a Miami girls trip. But all of a sudden we're in, Chad or Nigeria, South Africa, or like China or something, right? Like, is this a good soft launch for like other female travelers?
In terms of like the group trips?
Yeah.
Yes, and it's crazy because I never really liked group trips. And I went on my first group trip to Ghana after doing my own group trip. And I'm like, wow, I actually see the benefit in it because there are so many women who want to go places. They want to experience things, but they're still waiting on their friends. What does it say? It's really cool when the group chat or people make it out the group chat to the trip.
We love to see it.
But we rarely see it. And it's sad. And so a lot of women miss out on opportunities to explore the world because they're waiting on their friends. And it's always something, whether it's like my man won't let me go or my job won't let me go or I don't have the money right now. And by the time, people run out of excuses, years have gone by and you still haven't been anywhere. Except to Atlanta and Miami. And we tired of that. So I love group trips because it allows you to experience, but with safety in mind. So you're not having to go by yourself, but you're by yourself and you get to connect with other people who are probably experiencing that fear and anxiety of traveling by themselves. And
I went on my first solo trip.
Are you serious?
In June. I left Justin with the kids. Yes, this was just a couple months ago. I left Justin with the kids. I said, I'm about to go across an ocean so that I can rest. I've been either pregnant, breastfeeding, or doing both at the same time for almost 5 years now.
You needed it.
I'm tired.
You needed it.
Yeah. And I've never traveled by myself, especially so far away. And I thought, I'm seasoned, right? I'm worldly. I'm a professional.
Until you got over there?
The second I got, not even on the plane, not even to the terminal, I was on the train. I was on MARTA. I was headed to Hartsfield Jackson. I was sitting there I'm really about to just be by myself. I'm out here alone. I'm sociable. I am not shy. I can take it, but there was still this thing of I'm about to be by myself. So I'm curious because I've also never done a group trip. And so I can imagine, especially for people, whether it's the toxic boyfriend that won't let you go live your best life, dump him, or, the friend group or finances or whatever, there are just ways to make this more accessible.
Right.
What do those look like? What do people do on group trips? Is everyone just together ganging all the time, or is it
So when I started curating these experiences, right, the first thing I thought about was, in the beginning, I wanted to be all about the group, right? We're building this family because I want people to feel comfortable. Yeah. And when you're coming into a space, most times on my group trips, they're coming by themselves. And so I want you to feel safe. And the easiest way to make you feel safe, outside of showing you everything that's going on and all those things, is to help you realize that you're a part of a unit now. Mm-hmm. And then as we go along, then I allow free time for you to explore. So then people at this point, they then, number one, you probably are tired of your relatives. It's time to go home. I need to get out of this house. I've noticed with a lot of people by day 4, they're okay, I'm just going to go to the market down the street, right? By day 6, it's I didn't spend the whole day by myself. And that's what I love because it's baby steps. Yeah. It's baby steps. And there's a lady who went on my group trip last year to Kenya, who is coming back to Kenya next year. She's bringing a friend, but I was so happy because she's gone on 3 solo trips because of my group trip. And she sends me the cutest pictures, and I'm girl, you better stop before, I try to capitalize, and I did this. I helped her with this. So I'm I don't want to take credit, but she's always letting me know the reason why I'm okay with doing this now is because of the group trip. And there are a lot of Black women who are afraid to travel in Africa because of what we've heard or what's pushed out in media. So it's I don't want to be kidnapped and, sent away, or I'm living in a hut. And then they get to Kenya.
They don't want you in the hut.
Right.
First of all, I've seen the way they make food. You can't do that. You're of no use. You don't have any, because this is something wherever, you don't have any useful skills for someone to kidnap you and put you in a village. You're a liability. You're slow. You need somewhere to sleep. They're going to have to feed you. You're already too old to be trainable.
You're a dependent at this point.
You're a dependent. Nobody's going to kidnap you and bring you to some imaginary hut in some imaginary village to do what?
And the poo-poo thing is a real thing. Because when I went to go see how to learn how to make poo-poo, I was just oh yeah, the aunties wouldn't let me marry their kids and their nephews. Heck no, it was too much. I'm oh yeah, I'm done.
I've seen the process. I'm
there's nothing you can do. Maybe water the plants.
American arms? I know.
But then the pails, we would complain about the weight of the water. So
you're of no use to anything.
So it's that. I noticed a lot of Black women it's okay for us to go to, Europe. If that's a lot of people, that's my first solo trip, right? Going to Europe. And my first time going to Africa outside of the one time I went in 2019 wasn't until I didn't start traveling consistently throughout Africa until 2021. And it was really because we were still in the midst of the pandemic and the flights was cheap. And then I'm you know what, let me explore more. And then I realized that same attention I've been giving to Asian countries and European countries, and there's nothing wrong with that. I want to start focusing more on African countries because there's so much beauty that gets missed because of what we see on TV, where we see the starving kids, and not saying that they don't have them, but that's everywhere. I mean, I don't know if Detroit, people in Flint even have clean water now. So,
Alabama.
Right. So outside of what I would see, it was just like, that's not my thing. And then when I went to Kenya, I was just like, wow. And Kenya's actually hands down my favorite country of all time.
Really?
There's no place like Kenya.
Real quick, how many do you have in your, how many countries? I don't know if you're an exact 52 and a half person or roundabout person, but.
So I made an agreement with myself that I would stop country counting, right? It was like this bigger thing of like experiencing more and stop focusing on like passport stamps. So I stopped counting at around 40. So.
And when did you stop?
I want to say.
So that all of us at home can do the calculation.
2019.
Okay.
Yes, because 2019 was the time I went to 9 countries. No, I went to 7 countries in 3 weeks. And when I got home, right, and when you talk to people back home, they're like, wow, what a traveler. And then I was having a conversation with someone who travels a lot, but what I'm doing now, they were doing back then. And so, but she hates social media. She's like, And when I told her, she said, and you don't see how exhausted you were? Like, what is the use of doing all of that just to be exhausted? And you're spending 2 days in one country just to say, I've been there.
Right.
So after that, I just told myself, I'm not counting anymore. And I do count continents. So I've been to 5 different continents. So I don't think that's enough, but I don't think that's enough for people to be able to say, okay, well, this is how much, but 5 out of 7 isn't too bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with the group trips to Africa, I'd like to go specifically to Africa for that very reason. And I started going to Kenya in 2021 with my group trips because...
Where all are they? Real quick. Are they only, or is it Kenya, Ghana?
Oh, so I do Ghana, Kenya, and then I'm going to be doing Thailand for the first time next year, but it's for selfish reasons because I want to go to Songkran again. And I feel like, why not bring y'all with me and we just throwing balloons and enjoying that? So that's why I'm doing Thailand. But Kenya, one of the things I love about Kenya is it offers everything. It's like the travel trifecta. Like you have safari, you have the city, you have like beach life, you have everything. And oftentimes when people think about countries in Africa, it's so weird that we're just like, Kenya, that's it. It's just safari and that's it. And I'm like, these are countries. They have so much to offer. It's just like Mexico. You know the cartel? And I'm like, girl, cartel's in the States, baby. But you can't tell me out. You can't. If I'm lying, I'm flying. Whenever you mention anything happens in Mexico, I get so many messages from people who are like, I'm just checking on you. I'm like, girl, whenever something happens in California, I'm going to send you a message all the way in New York and say, I'm just checking on you. Because that's how far, what has happened is that far. Like the thing happened in Matamoros, and my family was like, I'm just making sure you're safe. You need to come home. I'm like, girl, it would take me 2.5 days to drive there.
Like, it's not near me.
They would get so bored on the drive to me that they would just give up and go back to the States.
And the cartel is simply not concerned with me.
They're too bored.
They're not concerned. Again,
dependent.
I have nothing to offer. I complain a lot. You know,
when it gets too hot, I'm like,
I can do that in 2 languages. The second one of those little bugs starts getting on me, they don't want me. I don't even have wealthy parents. Like, they really don't want me.
I would tell, if they kidnap me, I'm like, well, listen, the buck stops here because ain't nobody coming for me. Because I didn't even give them my card information. So, what's your name again, Jose? We going to chill out here? Okay. So you get bored of me. That would be it. But I think that's the awesome thing too about like people traveling solo. It's like they can find out things for themselves because we're so used to hearing, well, you know how many times people tell me, well, you know, such and such. And I'm like, you ain't even been there. When people say, because of Mexico, you were in Mexico? No, but then you don't know. You wouldn't know. You have even.
We were in Brazil. We were in Rio. And of all the things people have to say about Brazil and about Rio, I'm like, oh, when was the last time you were in Rio? And like, well, on the internet. And I'm like,
You don't even read, but now you want to read facts?
I know, people, and I got defensive about this. We had a real, and I think this was my first time, like, actually where I needed to go touch grass, because people were saying all kinds of, how dare you bring your kids to such a dangerous, and I'm like, ugh. Twitter fingers turned to trigger finger, you know.
Because I will go back and forth.
It was just the whole thing. I think it was like 2 days, and then, you know, these things happen. But even what you find on the internet, because they were like, you know, if you're worried about gun violence in the U.S., then why would you ever go to Rio? And I'm like, okay, let's splice this data a couple different ways, since y'all don't enjoy understanding that data is storytelling. You could switch a story a couple different. You want it from Goldilocks' perspective or the perspective of
CNN or Fox.
Like, we can do this, you know, when you look at it by schools, when you break it down by SES, when you look at it this way, when you look at it that way, we were saying actually in LeBlanc and the government, you know, and I stopped because they're not going to read anyway. And you can't even like link to articles really well in comments.
And they don't want to change.
They don't.
And that's what I had to realize too, because I would go back and forth. And I always say one way to tick me off is to say something about Mexicans. Like the nicest people, I've met the nicest, kindest people here. And it's like whenever people are just rude or something happens and they're like, well, I will never understand why Black people keep going to Mexico. Shut up. That's really what I want to say, because at the end of the day, you can't have an informed conversation about anything when you've never even been there.
Because you're hating from outside of the club.
You can't even get in. They're not what Chris Brown or whatever he said. You can't even get in.
Can't even get in. I don't love that.
I don't.
And I think there's so much of that, obviously, about so many places, especially ones that are more popular. People have a lot to say about Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, so on and so forth.
Guatemala,
they have so much to say. And I think that, like, we're starting to see that break with Latin America a little bit, right, as more people are there and showing, like, you know, day-to-day life and things.
Right.
But I feel like, at least for, like, the American segment, Africa, which, do I even want to say it that way? Because it's a whole continent, right? Is still so much shrouded in, like, you know what I mean? Oh, they're just in huts and something third. And I think that you have things like Afrofuture and people see like Dati December and they see like the party and the turn up and they're more interested.
Right.
But like, does that interest, again, in what you can take and what you can experience and what you can consume actually play into you being able to appreciate the culture that's over there?
And I think that's the saddest thing too, because I think even with Ghana, they began prepping for the tourists like in September, October, right? And so it's, of course you want tourists to feel safe, but, and I learned this from my Ghanaian ex-husband, if you want the real Ghana or the real Accra, you have to come before November, before October. And it's because, like, police are everywhere because they're going to always make sure the tourists are safe. Like, everyone, we all understand why. But then it's also like, it becomes like party central. So most people are coming there for the festivals and the parties, and they're not even venturing outside of that. So they don't get to see all of Accra. I think I was going to share the story, but there was a young lady who clearly had never been outside of the States before, maybe not even out of her own state. And she went, and we were in a group chat for the group trip. And I remember she was just like, everyone be careful, they're robbing people out here. And I'm like, where are they robbing people?
Ooh.
She just said they, right? But I'm like, who is robbing the people? And she's like, on this street. And then I look around and I realize I'm on the same street. She's saying people are being robbed. I'm like, do I look that broke? They can't even say they didn't want to rob me. I'm offended. I could be robbed. I look robbable. So, and you, right. Now that one, I meant to say that one, just, you keep that one in there. So when and every time when people make these statements, I always have to have like the devil and angel conversation, because I'm like, this is not how you want to do this, Karina. And then the devil says, and go. And I go. And I said, it's really important that we be mindful of how we say things in spaces where people may be anxious or nervous because they've never been to these places. She's like, no, I did see someone steal. And I'm like, girl, we're on the same street. And then it was crazy because while we're messaging, she's like, I'm here. And I look up and she's like right there. And I'm like, where did you see people being robbed? Because now I'm going to have to call you a liar in the group. Because we've gone past the whole thing of just side messaging and private messages. My grandmother does this. My grandma says, if you say something in public, right where you say it is where you're going to be embarrassed. And I'm like, and it was, had it been anything else, I think I could have just been like, all right, whatever. But it's the fact that you're pushing this notion that they are thieves. Then there was a situation where there was a man who clearly was beyond intoxication, like inebriated beyond words. He's falling around, and they sent a video in the group and said that the police officers, they did help him. That was in the video. And then they said the police officers stole his sneakers. And I don't condone people stealing people's belongings. But that could have happened in Houston. That could have happened in Atlanta. And maybe in Atlanta, they might have done more than that. That could have happened in New York. That could have happened anywhere. When you put yourself in this position, and I'm not saying it's right, but when you're traveling, you have to be responsible for yourself. You have to use common sense. So if you decide that you feel so safe to just, and that's also another form of entitlement, like I'm this drunk and no one's gonna do anything to me. No, baby, you're not home. If you decide to get that drunk, then you have to take what comes with it, and there are consequences. And I mean, then he was just like, I don't have many there's markets, baby. But you might be too scared to even venture to the market, so now you gotta walk with socks on.
They're robbing people in the market.
Right, sock feet.
All right, y'all, I hope you enjoyed part 2 out of 3. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notification bell so that you do not miss the 3rd and final installment of my conversation with Karina when it drops. Have a good one, family.